down by any means. It looks like they still have their sights and their lethal and less than lethal weapons pointed at that vehicle. But we haven't seen the person come out of, we haven't seen that suspect come out again.
Yeah, he is retreated towards the front of the trunk. You know, it's tricky with a vehicle that large. Those Chevy, I think it's a Yukon XL, so it's an extended Yukon there. Lots of space to move around in the back there. We can see some movement, which is indicative of his alertness. But other than that, we really don't have a good vantage point of what's going on. And certainly the more space there is back there, the more opportunity there is for him to conceal himself or improvise with other tools inside of that truck. At one point, when he was hanging out the passenger side, Colleen, there was actually a cardboard, maybe part of a cardboard box, that was actually blocking the right rear window, the back seat window on the right side of the vehicle. I don't see it anymore, but he was certainly trying to shield himself from view of those officers in the early minutes after the termination of this pursuit. Now he's basically been hanging out and moving around in the trunk behind the back seat, and I would say that from those lead officers there, from their point of view, they probably have you know, something of a better view, maybe not a perfect view, but a better view of what he's doing back there. We just don't have that luxury up here.
Yeah, Chris, and we're looking at it, just kind of looking at this area. Obviously, people are working. It doesn't look especially busy, but I don't know if this is causing any bit of a nightmare for any commuters. You can see, wow, you can see quite a few. They're pretty spread out, the resources. You can see the ambulance there, and
yeah,
you can see some trucks there stopped.
There's actually a neighboring Amazon facility here. In fact, that's the facility there to the top part of your screen. I'm now being told, Colleen, that they are starting to evacuate the Amazon facility. So this has caused enough alarm that there's an attempt, at least, to evacuate at least the parking lot of the facility. I'm not sure why they would evacuate the building itself, but we are getting reports that officers are being dispatched to evacuate at least part of that Amazon facility right next door to this sanitation service center, street service center, where he ended up, right in the driveway there. So some evacuations in place. This entire road is closed. Not a very busy road, but as you saw when we came around for just a second, upwards of 24 units from a number of different agencies have converged on the corner of Edenhurst and Colorado Boulevard, not to mention the fire department, several ambulances standing by. This was a wild pursuit. You kind of wish we were over it so we could tell you more of the story and put more of these puzzle pieces together, but it all happened so fast that it leaves a lot to the imagination as to what in the world provoked this guy. How in the world did they end up in this situation where they were forced to fire that many bullets, if they were indeed fired by officers? This certainly must have been a very, very dramatic police chase.
No kidding, absolutely. And you said everything that, you know, many of us are thinking. Like, too bad we didn't get a chance to get over this when it was happening. But you know it was fast. Especially you see, you just by the looks of that vehicle, you can just tell it was a very dangerous pursuit. And again, we're waiting to see how this person got their hands on this vehicle, where they, you know, was it just stolen or was it carjacked? We just don't know. We're still trying to figure out. And of course, law enforcement's very busy. That is one of the hardest things for, you know, news gathering, is when you really need some answers and you want some answers. You can't always get a hold of them because they're busy watching this and trying to figure out what are they going to do next. They obviously have watch commanders who are watching this. You have several different police agencies involved in this, and everyone's trying to make this a peaceful and a quick resolution. Nobody wants to be out there any longer than they need to, and they certainly don't want to hurt this person.
Oh, I can tell you at this point, they are not going to approach that vehicle. The call's been put out. The SWAT team is on the way out here, and it will be up to them in all likelihood to resolve this situation. This is now a standoff, and whether it's a car or a building, he is not coming out, right? So a standoff is a standoff. At this point, they're going to treat it like a standoff, wait for the pros to come in and negotiate with him, and hopefully they will be able to approach him with the proper equipment and the right negotiators to hopefully calm him down. And, you know, with any luck, maybe he will surrender later on, but he still has a lot of anger and energy in him to be moving around, fidgeting in the back of that truck. And this is just now going to be hopefully, we can hope, a textbook standoff, and they are trained to deal with that. They're going to babysit the situation until help arrives, but we can now get a little bit of a better view of his right arm there as he continues moving around in the trunk of this city vehicle.
Yeah, and it's, you know, it's distressing to see as well, because you just can tell this person is sort of unhinged right now, and don't know what prompted this person to take the actions that they did, but they're clearly not in a clear thinking mindset right now. And all they're looking at is it's one person against all those other law enforcement officers. So they're not in a winning situation, and you just wish that they would get the help they need, get out of the vehicle, and try to figure out what is going to happen to this person. You know, we sort of never see how long these individuals, what they're facing after, you know, these pursuits are finished. It looks like we're starting to see him again.
Yeah, he is definitely coming closer to that rear windshield. I can tell you that the SWAT team is now within range. They're only about 3 or 4 minutes out. So they should be here any minute, and then they will have an opportunity to get a briefing from the supervisor on the scene down there, and then they will huddle up and come up with their own strategy. Now you can see he is still clearly still trying to communicate, and even though he looks extremely angry, he's yelling profanities, whatever the case may be, waving that screwdriver. I know it sounds crazy, but any communication is good news in this situation. As agitated and uncontrollable as he may be, as long as it's just the screwdriver that he's armed with, any communication is better than nothing, and certainly better than him fidgeting around in the back trying to put something together. So as long as they can see him and communicate with him, that really lessens the danger here and gives SWAT team more time to get their act together, have a conversation, come up with the best strategy, pull that Bearcat, that armored vehicle eventually will approach the SUV, and then they will, in all likelihood, toss some pepper spray, some pepper balls in the back of that vehicle and gas him out, most likely would be my guess. This is speculation on my part, but most likely they will try and use either pepper spray or gas to essentially smoke him out. And if that doesn't work, they will resort to other means. Certainly canines are standing by at the ready as well. They've got all their tools here, and so they are ready to use them if they are put in that position. Yeah.
Again, the animal lover in me is always hoping that they don't put the canine in.
Of course.
Just because they are so agitated, and they have the screwdriver, which it could be used as a weapon, especially for if they are feeling like they are, they have nothing to lose. They'll certainly do whatever they can. I was wondering why they haven't done, but of course it's always easy to sort of be curious about what law enforcement procedures, and it is changing, but many times I didn't know that. Is it just the SWAT team that tends to do all the tear gas or pepper spray balls? Or is it just the SWAT team that does it? Or
that's right.
I was thinking that officers.
The officers do have less than lethal weapons that they can use that are more like, rubber bullets or bean bags and that type of thing. But in terms of the more sophisticated equipment, those are left to the SWAT team to deploy. We bring up he just tossed something
out.
It
looks like business cards or paper.
He's got maybe a wallet, or maybe he's showing something. He is definitely communicating, definitely angry, threw something out the back there, just another card. I don't know if these are credit cards or business cards or what the deal is here. He's now tossing some papers out the window. We mentioned the K-9 units just a moment ago, Colleen. I think the first thing that comes to my mind is the amount of glass around that vehicle, which would prevent them from sending the dogs in. But here comes the SWAT team's Bearcat. They are now ready to jump right into action. Look at this, pulling right up to the vehicle with no time to waste here. A little bit surprising, unless they've been on scene a little longer than I would realize. Originally, we were told about 5 minutes ago that they'd be here in just a few, and certainly they have pulled in right up to that SUV in quite the hurry. Now,
Chris,
that is probably one of several other...
Chris, I'm going to interrupt you really quickly, because as we head to the bottom of the half hour here, you can get the latest on this barricade situation on Eyewitness News at 11 o'clock, and we will continue to stream live coverage here on abc7.com or on the ABC7 Los Angeles app. Again, we're talking about this standoff that's happening here in Atwater Village.
Yeah, it really is a tense situation now, and all the more tense that these officers have now pulled up right up to the vehicle. Now, obviously, that's an armored vehicle. These are armored officers, and at the very least, they are kind of posing as a shield between the suspect and those other officers a little bit further back here. Those officers, including those CHP officers, could take a little bit of a breather now, knowing that the LAPD SWAT team has pulled up here, and they will most likely be the ones to take over this operation. Again, he's throwing something out the window, still has that screwdriver, I believe, in hand.
He does.
And is still communicating. So
he's just dropping things.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
He keeps dropping things. He's obviously he has someone's wallet or some kind of area that there's a bunch of paperwork, and he just keeps kind of taking everything out and dropping it. And you can see this, the SWAT vehicle is, he doesn't look like he's talking to the officers inside that vehicle.
No, he's not. And now you see that Bearcat pulling away, trying to put a little distance. So we'll see what their next move is here. But it's striking to me. Here comes the other one. I told you there might be more than one. And certainly here comes another armored vehicle with perhaps different tools in place. Maybe the other one's just going to box him in if he goes for a run. But you can see him with either a cable or a hose of some sort that's attached to some equipment back there. Maybe a pump of some sort. Again, this was a Department of Water and Power vehicle. They now have that water and power vehicle surrounded with armored units. So they've got both ends covered here. It's striking to me, Colleen. You know, we talked about the glass just a moment ago. It's just striking to me the way he's been leaning against the edge. He's done this on numerous occasions, and as well the passenger side of the vehicle, where all of those shards of glass must be you know, cutting his skin every time he, you know, reaches around that windshield there. But you can just see the amount of glass inside the vehicle and on the ground there as he comes out. This is just a recipe for more blood. And the reason I bring it up is because he doesn't seem to be reacting to any kind of pain. He seems uncomfortable. Earlier we saw him kind of babying the left side of his body. He appeared to be in discomfort, but it does not look like he is reacting to any sharp or acute pain, which almost makes you wonder what he might possibly be under the influence of here. He is just not acting, not only is he not acting rationally, he's not acting normal physically. He's really erratic and very, very, very volatile, just the way he's behaving and also the way he's communicating.
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. Exactly. When you're not responding to all that blood that clearly is coming from him, and you know, you could see him winding those cables in the back of that vehicle, winding them around his wrist. He's extremely agitated. I know we have some video. We might want to break away for a half a second of some shots fired, and we have some natural sound, so we can take a listen and look at some of the shots being fired at this vehicle. That is pretty remarkable. You heard that, Chris. I don't know if you can see it from your vantage point, but you could see law enforcement taking a stand, pointing, firing away at that vehicle, and then it kind of took off.
I counted, at a minimum, I counted 30 shots there just in that clip. Unfortunately, I was not able to view it as you were and you guys at home, but I counted at least 30 shots being fired there, and that is certainly, correlates with the bullet holes that have riddled the driver's side of this SUV. Now, what it would take for that kind of force to be fired at this suspect, I mean, your imagination, Colleen, can only wander, because the crimes that this person has committed to deserve that kind of force must be extremely, extremely serious. Now, we know that he was ramming police officers. I'm not sure that's enough to do it. We weren't here to see it, but that was a lot of gunfire pointed at that driver's seat.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is sort of one of those stories. It's like a drip, drip, drip. We're going to be finding out more and more details about exactly what led to this exact position. But you can see the LAPD. You can see the driver, the officer. You cannot tell. Obviously, their windows are up, and they obviously have loudspeakers. But we can't figure out who is talking to this person right now, or who is communicating with him.
No, it's hard to tell if anybody's even communicating with him. And, you know, in a normal standoff, you know, you often have the opportunity, even if the person's not, you know, if they're emotionally disturbed, you can still maybe get a relative on the phone, give this pass a phone into the vehicle and have, you know, some kind of communication with him, whether it's family members or negotiators. But in this case, the way he's acting, those things are, again, pretty much off the table. They have a live wire inside of that vehicle, and now it's just a matter of getting him out. I want to say smoke him out, because that most likely will be the first tactic they deploy, just based on my experience, but certainly we'll see what they decide to do here. But that's the only way, is to really coax him out of the vehicle. Eventually, he will have no choice. And, you know, they're not going to go in there and drag him out, most likely. It's going to be a situation where they either have to use more force until he comes out on his own, or you know, deploy one of these dogs. I'm just concerned by the amount of glass, whether they would even contemplate using the dogs in that way.
Yeah, probably not. I mean, they have to remember that these dogs are also, like law enforcement, they are a wonderful tool to use to apprehend suspects. But again, you do have to consider every officer's safety, which would include the canine's safety as well. And I mean, I can't understand how they obviously are trying to figure out what is the best way to get this person to give up, because they're not going to give up. So, and you could see them, they are still just, well, they're walking up there with that dog. Who knows what's gonna, and, you know, and they all have to come up with an idea of what to do here, because every incident is different. And this person, they don't know what this person, what kind of drugs this person may be on. I know I've said it countless times, but my father was law enforcement, and I do remember being a child. And sometimes he would say it was a tough call, because the person was so high on drugs that they can't feel any pain whatsoever. And it is very, it's kind of scary for the officers responding, because they're just so unpredictable, and you have no clue what they're on.
It really is, and it's really what's going through my mind in this exact situation. Something tells me that may be what they're dealing with down there, although we don't have any confirmation of that. Obviously, one can deduce that this person is most likely under the influence of something, and something strong, just based on his behavior and his lack of reaction to pain, which is another thing. You know, sometimes you'll use a less than lethal round on a suspect, and it doesn't even faze them if they're under enough drugs. So you know, all these things kind of help you weed out what types of tools you can use in any given situation. And as you mentioned so eloquently, every single situation that these officers face on a daily basis is different. Every encounter with a dangerous suspect, no two are alike. And I could say that as a reporter who covers these situations. They're all different. They all take on a life of their own, and a different danger is posed every single time to different, to these officers on the ground there.
Yeah, and the other thing is many times just the sheer volume of law enforcement here, that is very intimidating for any person who's in a sort of a clear mind. If you are clear enough, you're trying to get away from authorities. You definitely do not want to be arrested. You don't want to go to jail. But this person, it seems impervious to realize what's going on here, because they're still outside their windows. They have these 2 SWAT vehicles. They're flanked by these 2 SWAT vehicles. They're boxed in. They can't go anywhere. They're still talking to law enforcement, but they're not showing any sort of reasoning of giving up.
No, and one of the reasons why, maybe because there was a report from an officer, and this is just a report. I have to stress, we do not have this confirmed, but apparently there was a report by an officer that he was armed at some point with a handgun. And that really starts to tell more of the story here. Whether he tossed that handgun out during the pursuit is a whole other question, and certainly possible. But unless they have that part confirmed, they have to presume that he is indeed armed and dangerous with more than perhaps just that screwdriver. Again, I would imagine that based on what we're seeing here, if he had that gun, they would have seen it again by now, or maybe he's lost it inside the vehicle, or more than likely tossed it out during the chase. But if somebody saw that gun, if somebody saw a weapon in his hands, that plays a big part into the decision making of all of these first responders that you see here encroached on this suspect.
I know, and again, they're clearly trying to figure out. They're coming up with a plan. There's certainly enough officers to figure it out, but they don't know. Again, you keep seeing, you see them have various weapons. Again, I can't imagine what they're thinking. You can see some of them. They have the cameras on their helmets, and and then they have their watch commanders watching. You don't know if there's a watch commander right there, but that would be intimidating enough just to hear the dog barking. You would think that would scare them enough to go, oh, I don't want that dog to jump inside here and attack me. Let me get out. But this person doesn't seem at all fazed by this.
No, except for the fact that he's now huddled back, back in the corner. We've seen this before, though. He takes a breather and then comes back out, and you can only assume that his adrenaline is through the roof. But if it's the adrenaline that's driving this, eventually it does wear off. Eventually, no telling how long, but eventually he will start to behave differently. Just physiologically, things change here, and he will start to behave differently. And they have time on their side. Law enforcement, in most cases, and this case is no exception, has the luxury of time on their side. But they've also been quite aggressive in terms of pulling these units right up to the vehicle, and whether it's for intimidation purposes until they come up with that plan, or whether they actually are about to execute their next steps, we will see. I think we're about to find out, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, I think so, Chris. It looks like they're going to do something really within the next few seconds here, because they're getting right next to that vehicle, and that passenger, the back passenger door kind of keeps wavering a little bit back and forth, open or closed. So we'll see.
And now it looks like he's back towards the rear windshield. He's poking his head out. And at this point, you feel a little more confident in saying that they could probably communicate with him better, or at least understand what he's saying, if he's even intelligible at all, if he's able to even, if he's even coherent. But he is just so animated and so erratic. His behavior this entire time over the past hour has just been so unpredictable and violent in ways that that's the reason we're here right now with all of this use of force in position.
Yeah, it's always interesting when you see those, the rotating disc on the top of those SWAT vehicles kind of get into position to use it as a shield to see what is that person, what's that law enforcement officer doing that they can't see from any other of the vantage points that they have. I know that those windows are very, very tinted in that Yukon, but I mean, I just keep wondering, and I know that we've never reported on it, or we haven't reported. It was just one suspect in there. We don't know if there was anybody else in this vehicle, correct? Only because there's so many bullet holes. It's just amazing that one could possibly survive that.
That's exactly right. Unfortunately, it's really a mystery at this point. We can hope that it's just him.
Yeah.
But whether there's anybody else dead or alive inside that vehicle is certainly a mystery at this point. Now here comes another officer through the top of the vehicle, and my assumption here, I hate to make too many of those, but without speculating too much, my best guess would be we might be seeing the preparations for gas deployment into that vehigle.
Yeah, you see, this is so, it's very tense.
And there it is.
Yeah.
There is the gun that will fire gas canister, either a canister or a pepper ball inside the vehicle. And we will see, and we'll know right away, hopefully if we can maintain a visual here, we'll have a better idea of how he reacts. If he doesn't react at all, that tells you something.
A lot.
And hopefully, if he does react, it'll prompt him to, you know, think a little harder about what's going on here, and maybe physically he'll just be so uncomfortable he'll climb out of the vehicle. We'll just have to see here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm like kind of holding my breath here watching. It's not many times you get to get this kind of vantage point with the SWAT team right there with their with that weapon drawn. You said it looks like it's a pepper ball weapon, or it's definitely not tear gas.
They have a number of tools, and it's hard to say which one this particular firearm is, or this particular weapon is going to shoot in there. But he's still clutching onto that hose from that that tank there. It looks like either an oxygen tank or an air, most likely an air tank. Frankly,
right.
that yellow tank there, most likely an air tank with that hose that he is still clutching onto for some reason. As he, and I still see, you see how bloody that hand is. His hand,
both of his hands,
both hands are covered in blood. Whether the hands are bleeding or whether he's nursing another wound with those hands, his hands are covered.
What is he trying to do though with that back, that tailgate? You can't figure it out. He's just mutilating it though. That's for sure. And he's got several different cords, and he keeps winding them around his wrist, and he's just so animated. He's really, I mean, I said it earlier, he just seems so unhinged right now. And, you know, at some point, this person who, one of the police officers, I don't think that there's another person another officer using the other shield doing the same thing, but at least we see that one with, right? There's not another no, just this one.
Yeah, just that one, and he's still aiming, you know, right into the direction of the suspect there. It'll be a little bit difficult at first to tell when he fires, but you might see a little bit of smoke emanate from the weapon, and then we should expect to see some kind of movement from that suspect. Maybe they're trying to intimidate him, but I think any minute they're going to have to put that to use here in just a minute.
Yeah, I know. I'm watching the police officer, and I keep thinking I'm going to see that his hand move, where it's going to show that that they did fire whatever they wanted to fire inside there. But there's obviously a police officer or a SWAT team member who is talking to that suspect. You can see, you know, their hands are moving, you know, kind of animately as well. So they're trying to talk to him, but you can't figure out what they're saying or how they're going to. When they're going to kind of take another step forward.
And it's always difficult in these situations. I mean, and like I said earlier, you know, every standoff is different, and many times the standoffs can last hours and hours and hours, and sometimes they last much quicker, but there's so much waiting that goes on in these situations. And now you see that officer trying to appeal to his thirst with that bottle of water. Maybe he'll take the water. He's offering that plastic bottle of water. He could throw it in there. He's gesturing. He could throw the water through the window, and we can't see how he's reacting to that. He's still moving around, or maybe they could even take advantage if he comes out to reach for the water. But that was a gesture there that you saw him make there. They're trying to put him at ease in any way possible without hurting him. And it just goes to show you the lengths to which they go to when they, you know, if they can end a dangerous situation without using deadly force, they want this to end as peacefully as possible. So at some point, he posed a serious enough danger that upwards of 30 shots were fired through that vehicle. And now that the situation is contained and they are not threatened by him, they can use much more less lethal and even peaceful options to end the situation, you know, safely.
And this is certainly a collaborative situation. Again, just drawing on my own knowledge from my father, he was in the SWAT team as well for San Francisco police. And, you know, they do so much training and so much specialized training that these officers, they really are a team. They rely on each other, and they know who has certain strengths and certain weaknesses. They you know, they're all one, but they do know that certain people are much better at negotiating than one of the other ones. The other one's much better at shooting and, you know, sniper training. So it's very interesting to interesting to see what they're doing, how they're trying to get this person to surrender. And again, you know, we saw a little while ago, Chris, you heard it. Our viewers got to see it. We see this suspect, his head is kind of peering out. Maybe he does want that water. But, you know, we did see moments ago the shots being fired, and it's a very limited viewpoint, but it's very startling to hear all those gunshots. So let's take a listen again to that video. It makes you think, and when you hear the bullets, when you hear it firing, it makes you think that that is the suspect firing upon the officers, because they really take a stance of that they are taking shots being fired at them. But again, you know, this is very limited video that we were seeing from somebody else who obviously filmed it on their phone. So it's cell phone video is what it is.
Yeah, we should point out again, he did ram into several officers, so that is very serious. And judging by the damage on the truck, these were not love taps. These were pretty hard hits. So at this point, we haven't heard of any officers being injured, but this was a violent enough encounter that certainly that was a possibility. And again, just the attempt of ramming a law enforcement officer, you know, especially at the speeds required to cause that kind of damage, are very, very serious charges. And if you add to that he was seen at some point with a small caliber pistol, even if he didn't use it, here comes a third. Look at this. Here comes a third Bearcat that's going to pull into position. So some heavy artillery now surrounding this suspect. They are really ready for anything here. We've you know, we've seen this on occasion, and this is a night where they are putting all the tools to good use here to try and end this as peacefully as possible. Some people will look at this picture and, you know, immediately think and wonder or ask questions about whether this kind of force is necessary. The fact of the matter is, it's this kind of force that is most likely to bring this to a peaceful resolution. That's how you get a peaceful resolution sometimes, by being able to bring in enough equipment that you don't put officers' lives in danger, and you can end this. You just give yourself more options at the end of the day to end a situation like this safely. Yeah,
and you know, and when you're saying you have to bring in quite a few resources, it's also, you know, public safety. You don't want this person getting out. They're so erratic. You never know where, if they went into one of these office buildings, you can understand why they would want to evacuate some of the nearby buildings and businesses, because you wouldn't want somebody like this.
No indication of that, not yet. one way or the other.
Sorry about that, Chris. I know you're getting spoken to by our assignment desk
Sorry
and
about that.
producers and
I'm
directors.
sorry, Colleen.
No, that's okay. But I was saying, you had said just moments ago, you bringing in a lot of resources to bring this to a peaceful end because this person is so erratic. And can you imagine if we didn't have these resources? You're right by these warehouses. They could just run inside one of these warehouses and really create a terror for any of these innocent people who are working nearby.
Absolutely, and like we said earlier, they have taken the additional precautionary step of evacuating at least part of that Amazon facility, which is a couple hundred feet away, and they have completely shut down this entire area. So they've really isolated this situation, and they've contained it. Literally and figuratively, they have contained this suspect with 3 armored Bearcats. And at any moment now, I would expect to see a long pole. Typically, they will use a long pole to deploy that gas canister. It may be a situation where it comes from behind while he's distracted on, in the rear of the vehicle. Maybe they try and insert the gas through the front while he's not looking, or perhaps they go head on through the side. We just don't know. There's all kinds of ways that they could play this, and the goal is obviously to catch him off guard. But there's a lot of strategizing that goes into these, and sometimes from up here, it looks like and feels, I gotta tell you, Colleen, sometimes it feels like they're just waiting around, but they're not waiting. They are actively strategizing and coming up with not only a plan A, but a plan B, a plan C, and a plan D. They are always equipped with contingency plans when they go into any situation, especially one as volatile as this.
Yeah, and you could see that officer sort of taking different vantage points to see inside that vehicle and waiting for the go-ahead to move forward with whatever he's been instructed to do. But it is always interesting, and you see these Bearcats. I was just about to do some look into them because they're incredible pieces of machinery as well. They hold so many officers. They have so many tools inside there to respond to so many different situations that officers are faced with on whether on a mass scale or a small scale like this.
Yeah, and you're right. Yeah, I think he's just basically waiting for that go-ahead. He's essentially just waiting for the call. There's a supervisor on scene down there who will ultimately give the go-ahead for any particular action that they take here. And as they continue to strategize, they are also losing a little bit of daylight. And in a few more moments, the sun is already set. So you can expect that in the next few minutes here, over the next half hour, they will start to lose daylight. But because of the close quarters here and the nature of proximity here, they won't lose visual. They won't lose too much advantage here. They've got plenty of lights of their own. They've got goggles. They've got floodlights if they need to light up the truck. They have so many tools at their disposal. I don't think that the loss of daylight will play a big role here, but just mentioning that as night falls, the situation does change slightly.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you certainly, light obviously, it definitely gives you advantage during a situation that's hostile like this. But again, you cannot get in the mind of a suspect when they're faced with what they're facing, but they've been in this situation for quite some time now, Chris. Probably close to an hour or so, wouldn't you say?
Well over almost 2 hours, about at least an hour and a half, maybe going at an hour 45. One of the things that would prevent them, or at least slow them down a little bit, would be, and we can't say that this is happening because we don't have very good visibility into that white SUV, but they might be, altering their plans depending on what they see him doing in there. Now, he's moved further up towards the front of the truck, to the trunk of the truck, I should say, and, if they see him in a state where he may be suicidal or maybe trying to self-harm himself, that is another variable that they will try and prevent, and that'll kind of alter their next steps, their next course of action here. I'm again speculating because there are indications that he is certainly capable of that, but obviously we just don't know that for sure. But just judging from what we're seeing here, it's at least a possibility based on their disposition here.
Yeah, it's unusual to see 3 Bearcats really kind of closed in on a suspect. But again, like you said, they have the resources. Sometimes they feel that they are in need. We saw those gunshots. We heard the gunfire. They know that this person is quite dangerous. And when you see the video again, you know, we saw it a moment ago. We can take a look at it again. But when you see that video and you hear the rapid gunfire, you can't tell who's actually firing. Let's take a listen again. Again, Chris, you can when I take a look at this, that video, it looks like the officers are running away because the gunfire is going on them. But you know, right now we're coming up onto the 8 o'clock hour. Again, this is live streaming coverage. I'm Colleen Sullivan in studio. Chris Christie is live in Air 7 HD. We have been watching the end of a police pursuit in Atwater Village at Colorado Boulevard in Edenhurst, where 3 Bobcats are now the SWAT team from LAPD. They have now responded to the scene. They're trying to get this under control. Chris, you can give a bit of a recap on exactly what led us to this point.
Yeah, it's been a dramatic evening here, and as we come to the end of this pursuit in Atwater Village, we should reiterate that this all started earlier in the afternoon up in the San Fernando Valley, somewhere in LAPD's Foothill Division. To recap what we've seen here this afternoon was an extended chase, a wild, a wild and crazy chase at that led eventually onto the 134. Off of the 134 near Colorado is where the officer first called for help. In that general vicinity, there was a call for help by one of those LAPD officers, and then came those shots, came the gunfire, rather, that you spoke of, Colleen. So there was a call for help by those officers. We don't know what prompted that. We only know that there were numerous reports of the suspect ramming the vehicle into police patrol cars. So whether he was cornered and trying to back out of a tight space or a dead end, certainly a possibility. In any event, the pursuit continued further down, paralleling the 5 freeway. He ended up on Edenhurst, never actually got onto the 5 freeway, but came to a stop eventually here at Edenhurst and Colorado Boulevard, where dozens of LAPD, California Highway Patrol, and other agencies are here at the end of this pursuit. A wild chase where this suspect damaged that stolen vehicle by ramming into patrol cars and disabled the vehicle. You can see very heavy front end damage. The wheels are off of the vehicle, so the vehicle is disabled, not going anywhere. And when we first pulled up on the scene, we could see just how agitated and violent that suspect was as he was screaming out the passenger window, crawling across broken glass, eventually into the back of the truck, and punching out the rear windshield of that white Chevy GMC Yukon, rather. That is a Department of Water and Power truck, incidentally, a stolen truck from the city of Los Angeles. And within the hour, they were able to call for the SWAT team, who has now arrived in full force here with 3 Bearcats, numerous officers, upwards of a couple of dozen officers on scene down there, as well as the LA City Fire Department, ambulances stationed nearby as well. At this point, we have not heard any reports of officers being injured, but what we can say for certain, evidenced by that video, is that there was a lot of gunfire exchanged here, and at one point the suspect was seen with a small caliber pistol, according to reports. Again, all of this is fluid, but it all jives with what we have been witnessing here over the last 2 hours. And now the standoff continues, as it has now going on its first hour. I think we're going into hour number 2 here, where the suspect has just refused to come out of the vehicle and has only been waving a screwdriver out of that back windshield. Never really posing a threat to officers since we've been here. They have had guns trained in his direction the entire time, and now that the LAPD SWAT team has taken over, you can see the dynamics of this situation have changed dramatically. As the sun goes down, they have every tool ready at their disposal, including canine units, less than lethal weaponry, certainly lethal rifles, as evidenced by that officer up on the hatchback, the top hatch, I should say, of that Bearcat. He's got a long rifle aimed right in that suspect's direction, and still, as we zoom in, you can see he is continuing to fidget around with that air tank. It appears to be a tank with a hose, a yellow tank with a hose that he is fidgeting with.
Yeah, you can definitely see that, and you can see these are always somewhat fascinating to watch as well, because to see how they're going to get this person to leave this vehicle or surrender. I know you said it earlier, you didn't want to speculate, but I echo what you're saying. I don't see this person coming out on their own. I think they are going to be forced out, whether it's going to be by, just the sting and the pain of a non-lethal round of bullets that might hit them, or pepper spray or pepper balls that are deployed inside that vehicle. But again, you can see you get a really good look at his hands. Both of them are just so bloodied and raw looking. And to see that it doesn't look like, he is licking his wounds by any means. He looks like he is very agitated. He is doing all kinds of busy work inside there with those cables, or, those tubes that are coming from the air tank. And that might be one of the reasons why they haven't fired anything inside there. You never know. Maybe the Water and Power company has said, that tank is whatever it is. It could be hazardous if it's punctured. I don't know.
Yeah, it certainly could be. And now you see that pole there, that long pole is indicative of, you could use that for a number of different things. In this case, my money is they will drop a gas canister inside the vehicle using that pole. That's my guess. Again, all kinds of possibilities, but that's my guess as to what we may be about to see here. Still lots of movement coming from the rear of the vehicle. We don't know if the hands themselves are injured, as you mentioned, or if it's another part of his body that may have been either grazed by a bullet or hurt by the glass as the glass was shattering. Of course, you have bullets flying through glass. You have him punching out the back windshield. I mean, the chaotic nature of how all of this ended has just left a lot to the imagination, but clearly we could say that he is injured somehow and his hands extremely raw and bloodied, and now it's a question of whether they can resolve this using less lethal force. Negotiations don't seem to be going very far here, but there's also the possibility and concern, I think, throughout this. You have the concern that, what is he capable of, not in terms at this point of injuring officers, because they're pretty protected at this point, but is he capable or willing to injure himself? Is there any evidence of self-harm with that screwdriver or other tools inside of that truck that they are concerned about, or whether they have even witnessed already? We just really don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah, I sort of marvel at this, because you can't get in the mind of the suspect, but you just want to know what led up to this chain of events that started this with what happened before this truck was stolen.
What led up to this?
Yep. And is there anyone, as we know, like we said earlier, it's going to be a drip fashion. We're going to find out a drip of information, because I'm so curious about what could lead someone to then steal this truck, then when you look at that video, it looks like the suspect is open firing on the officers, because you can see the officers running to take shelter, and you can still hear the gunshots being fired. So it leads me to believe that that is when let's listen. And you see that car drive away, and then you see the officers run. Obviously, the person trying to get video, it must have been very stressful. We appreciate the person who sent in the video, because that had to be, I mean, pretty heart-stopping to see what was happening, and then to hear those gunshots. That you probably, the person probably, well, you just never know. Chris, you never know if the person heard gunshots and that's what triggered them to press record or what have you. But boy, you know how it is. You have a child. I have children. You would never get the right moment when something happens. You fumble with your phone to get the record video to go as quickly as possible, and you miss the moment. So you never know if there was another moment before they actually got it to record.
Yeah, and that's what I'm really wondering about. Something prompted that level of force, and it very well may have been that he posed a direct threat. Most likely he posed a direct threat, whether it was with the vehicle or with the handgun. Either way, the go-ahead was given and the shots were fired, and not just a few shots, but upwards of 30 to 40 shots. And anytime you have an officer-involved shooting, especially one like this, I mean, this is a big deal. I would hope we'll start to have some answers sooner rather than later, because anytime there's an OIS, officer-involved shooting, you will most likely, in this situation, have a public information officer dispatched to the scene here, most likely even a press conference in the next, in the coming hours here. So a lot of information to find out, lots of blanks to fill in this particular story. A dramatic night here in Atwater Village. The only good thing we can say is that at this point, it does not appear that any citizens or officers, from our knowledge, have been injured. They have not been hurt, as far as we could tell. Certainly, despite all the violence, this is where we are with an injured suspect who is refusing to come out of the vehicle. And that is something to be thankful for. Lots of movement still inside the vehicle, and we are assuming that he's the only one in there. We don't know for sure that there is nobody else inside that vehicle. We're just making that assumption for now, as he is the main focus and the biggest threat and liability for those officers.
Yeah, and you know what, Chris, we're looking at the vehicle, and we're seeing all those puncture wounds, the gunshot holes inside the side and the passenger in the driver's side. And then inside the front windshield, you can take a look at it right there. There are at least 7 or 8 bullet holes. So it looks as if that vehicle was heading straight into an officer's direction, and they were sort of being forced to open fire on that vehicle. Again, Chris, to give people an idea of exactly where this is happening, we know this is in Atwater Village, and it's at Colorado Boulevard in Edenhurst. But if you zoom out a little tiny bit, is it affecting the whole area? Because we know this looks like an industrial area, which is why there's an Amazon distribution sort of center there. It doesn't look like it's causing a lot of traffic.
No, it's not impacting traffic at all. Just that Colorado Boulevard, Edenhurst Avenue there is blocked off, which does include one of the entrances to that Amazon facility right there on the left-hand side of your screen, where we did receive reports earlier that there was an effort to at least partially evacuate that facility. Probably most likely, I'm guessing they meant the parking lot, because the parking lot is just a short distance away. But fortunately, and it's really a big deal that this is happening in a desolate area. That's not in a residential neighborhood. There are no neighbors that are impacted by this. This is really not affecting anybody at this point, except for the officers in this picture here. They really have this very it's really a service street, if you will, that's just blocked off here, and they have a lot of room to play with, and they have a lot of tools at their disposal here, and all the more reason where maybe it might not be the case if we were in a residential neighborhood, but in this situation, it gives them even more time to take their time, have patience, and if they have to wait for him to fall asleep and be blinded by those floodlights, maybe that's another tactic. I think they'll probably deploy gas first, but anything is possible. They, again, have time on their side here, and this could go on for hours, potentially, if history is any indication. Again, You don't know in any situation. They're all different. What's going to happen next? It's really a suspenseful night, to say the least here, because, you know, there are so many possibilities and there are real lives at risk here. Anytime you see officers in a position to use that kind of force, first with the use of gunfire, and now with this kind of artillery in place here, this is going to be an interesting end to a dramatic night. No matter how you slice it, one can only hope it ends peacefully, but there's just no guarantees of that whatsoever.
I know. You know, I am glad there is some relief that is in sort of an industrial part of Atwater Village, because you don't see a bunch of bystanders. People aren't having to walk their animals, you know, when they get home from work. It is a very sort of isolated area where there's not a lot of, you know, traffic, and if there's any good spot where something like this needs to happen, this is a pretty good spot, because they're really centrally located too. There's as we know, there's several different agencies that have taken part in this, the apprehension of this suspect. But it is fascinating, you know, when you see them assemble that shield, and you see one of the officers holding that shield. Yeah, exactly, that one behind there. They're obviously thinking, are we going to be able to approach the suspect? But they still are unsure of this person's, obviously the person's state of mind. And you know, look at all that blood on the back of that tailgate, and look at that person's hand. I mean, we see where a lot of this blood is coming from.
It's gruesome. It's gruesome, really is. And, you know, not only do they not know what he's thinking or what he's capable of or what he's under the influence of, but they also don't know what else is in that vehicle. And we should reiterate, especially for those just joining us, this is a suspect who was spotted at one point, reportedly by one of those officers, to have a handgun in his possession. And the reason that's important is that we're getting word that he's apparently communicating with officers that he basically wants to shoot everybody.
Oh, wow.
Now, we're taking that with a grain of salt, because since we have been over this situation, we have not seen any evidence of a gun. That was a report that came from an eyewitness, an officer who witnessed a small caliber pistol in his hand at one point during this pursuit. Again, we don't know what the circumstances were there, or whether he threw the gun out of the vehicle, or whether the gun is still locked and loaded inside of that vehicle. And certainly if it is, and if they don't know, they have to assume that it is, then certainly that really gives more weight to his threats. Yeah, but anytime you have, I mean, this is a person that they're trying, right? They're trying to communicate. They're trying to offer him water. They're trying to appeal to his, you know, whatever sensibilities he has left. But they don't appear to be getting very far with the suspect. And by the way, you know, rest assured that LAPD has some of the best tactical negotiators in the world who do this for a living. And I mean, there's no doubt about that. They've done movies on these guys. I mean, they are the best in the business. So if anybody can negotiate with this guy, it's the guys that you're looking at in this frame right here. LAPD SWAT team is one of the finest in the world, and that's what gives you hope and confidence in situations like this. But if he leaves them with no other options, then this could get very ugly, and already it's been a pretty ugly night. It
certainly has, and I'm hoping that maybe this person's parents, that they have witnessed and they've been called by one of their friends or family members or neighbors saying they are witnessing this person taking these kind of steps, because at some point, you know, sometimes we see it where a parent or a spouse, you know, comes to the scene and tries to reason with the suspect, because this person seems so, you know, again, stubborn to what's happening around them to give up. And all I keep doing is seeing this person wind that cable around their wrist and then unwind it. It's just, they're just so highly agitated right now. And I don't know if they have any more substance inside the vehicle that they can stay like this all night long. But you can see that the officer was talking to them, and he veers his head out to kind of continue to talk to the officer. Obviously, they're trying to say, do you want water still?
Yeah, he's got more. He's another bottle of water, trying to offer the suspect water. maybe not even to drink, but maybe to heal, maybe to nurse the wound, because, you could look at this a few different ways, right, Colleen? He's got this hose, he's got that air compressor behind him. Is he trying to hurt himself, or is it the other way around? Is he possibly trying to cut off the circulation so that he doesn't continue to bleed out? Is he trying to improvise and come up with a way to create a makeshift tourniquet inside the back of that truck? But obviously, it's so painful, he may be having a hard time, doing that successfully. Or is it the other way around, where he's actually trying to hurt himself, and maybe they're trying to offer him water one way or the other? We're kind of, we're just, it's all speculation. We have very limited intelligence, but we do see from a limited vantage point here that he is still fidgeting with that hose for some unknown reason. He's still fidgeting with it, wrapping it around his bloody wrists, and it just leads you to wonder, is he trying to help himself, or is he trying to hurt himself? This water, could serve a number of different purposes. If they appeal to his sensibilities and they can pass that water along to him, maybe that will work. We've seen them try it a couple of times already. It doesn't seem to be working. They have gas ready to fill that vehicle with smoke and gas and choke him out, essentially. But they haven't used it yet, and it leads me to believe that there may be a reason that they haven't used it yet. Again, I have to stress, all of this, Colleen, is pure speculation.
Absolutely.
Just based on what we're seeing here and what we've seen in the past in similar situations.
It's like when you're watching a movie, or you're watching, we're watching this and we're seeing it, and we've seen a lot of these situations, and we can kind of recall on what we've seen in the past and what tactics have been done in the past. But I can only imagine how many people are watching this saying, just get out of the car. Like, I would think one of my children would say, why isn't he getting out of the car? And, everyone's kind of thinking, why isn't he getting out of the car? What happened earlier? What happened? Again, I keep wondering the backstory of this whole thing. What happened to get to this point? And I really hope we do end up finding out. I hope that law enforcement do hold a press conference, because sometimes they don't. Sometimes they apprehend a person, they take them to, they take them into custody, and then the next day, we're none the wiser about exactly what happened. So it would be great to have this come to a peaceful resolution, and then to actually see, is there a chain of events that happen? Because we know there is, but exactly what are those chain of events that happen to lead to this point?
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Colleen. I hope we hear from a PIO sooner rather than later. And you certainly can't have a shootout in the middle of a busy city street and not, answer questions as to what transpired here. So this is the big story of the night. Goes without saying. It's just a matter of time before we hear from LAPD and get some firm answers on what led to this dramatic chase and how this unfolded just before 7 o'clock this evening. That's about when all of this started. I want to say right between 6:30 and 7 o'clock by my estimation, and it's now 8:20. So we're going on a couple of hours, but this is only getting more painful for him, not less, as he begins to, as his adrenaline comes down and he starts to, face different, different dangers in front of him with these different weapons and different officers trying to communicate. He's obviously in another world. I mean, he is not in the right mental state to negotiate, otherwise that would have worked by now. So it's just a matter of him either being in so much pain that he wants to come out of the vehicle, or they just are forced to use other tactics. It really is as simple as that. I just think there must be a reason why they haven't used some of those tools already. They have patience, they have time on their side. We've talked about all that. They have plenty of space to work with here. There are no civilian dangers as far as I could tell. So it's something is giving them reason for pause to, kind of hold the fort, kind of babysit this like you would, a lot of other standoffs, and then see if he reacts to some of their, more, generous offers.
Yeah, again, you said it before, they are here for the long haul. If they wanted this to be done earlier, they could have accelerated the situation. But there is something that's stopping them from really using any sort of force to get this person out of there. And again, you said it earlier, Chris, when you see the suspect talking to law enforcement, it does give you a little bit of comfort knowing that that at least he's communicating. Again, we don't know if he has a weapon inside this vehicle. We have yet to see any weapon produced from him, but we did see that video. We have called on it again. If we can bring it up again as well, because you can see the vehicle taking off. You can see the officers taking cover, and you can see that vehicle drive away. And it seems like the suspect is the person firing shots. So we can take a look at that vehicle again as we're watching this barricade situation. But I don't know what kind of gun that is. It just kind of, you said a handgun possibly, Chris, but it goes pretty quickly. Don't know enough about guns, but it has a pretty rapid rate of bullets coming out of that gun.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. If those shots, by the way, I'm hearing these gunshots. I have actually not seen the video that we are replaying, so pardon me a little bit. I might need you to describe what we're seeing in that video, because if that gunfire is coming from that SUV in the direction of officers, that's a horse of a different color, as they say. That is not coming from a small caliber handgun. That is coming from a very different kind of a weapon, I would say.
Well, yeah, one of my colleagues is saying they believe that is not coming straight from the suspect's car. It might be other officers, but the only vantage that we see, Chris, is a very narrow. It's a really narrow view, because the person who's taking the video suddenly realizes the gunshot, and then the video kind of goes down to the ground and gets a little everywhere. So you don't actually get to see all of it, but you see the officers getting out of the car, and they put looks like a less than lethal, sling around, and then you see them run though, and you hear gunshots happening, and you see them run, and you can sort of see gun smoke, but you don't see them ever take aim and fire at that suspect like they're taking it out.
Well, there's a possibility. There's probably a good possibility that, first of all, they'd be very judicious in terms of if officers were firing on him. Even if it wasn't the officers in the video, the ones that were running away could have been running away from crossfire. You would imagine, in almost every situation, they wouldn't even fire their weapon if there was a chance that there were officers in that direction. But again, depending on how all this transpired, those may have been officers just running away so that they make sure that they are safe from other law enforcement who are firing upon the vehicle. Again, I'm not sure if that makes sense based on the video, but that's kind of one of the scenarios I can imagine if officers who did not have their guns ready were, trying to run away from, friendly fire, if you will.
Yeah, and Chris, we're gonna not have your audio for just a minute, and we're gonna kind of recap exactly what's going on. You're looking at live breaking news. We've been covering this for the better part of almost 2 hours. This happened, and then we kind of got on it about an hour and a half ago, where it was the end of a pursuit. But we know it was the LAPD Foothill Division was tracking the suspect, and that's when the suspect may have rammed into a police vehicle, and then we're being told that shots were fired, and an officer call of needing help was put out through the radio. This did come out, the suspect was also on Colorado Street on the southbound 5 freeway at the Atwater Village area. But again, this has come to a stop in Atwater Village at Colorado Boulevard in Edenhurst. You can see the suspect. When the suspect stops, they themselves break out that back window of that water and power truck, because the water and power truck, it was stolen. So again, we do not know how that vehicle was stolen, where it was stolen, but I did notice that the gas cap was open, so leads one to believe that maybe it was taken at a gas station. But again, we're back to live images. We see that suspect surrounded by 3 LAPD Bearcats. They are trying to get this suspect to surrender. Chris Christie is live in Air 7 HD. We've been doing this together this evening, and we've been certainly speculating a lot about what has led up to this and what is going to happen from here with the LAPD.
Yeah, and one of the things we're starting to intercept again on the different police frequencies is that this may very well be a situation that is not all that uncommon. We haven't fortunately haven't seen it successful in recent months, but if this is indeed a possible case of suicide by cop or somebody who wishes to be killed by the cops, that's apparently what he's expressing to them, apparently. That is, again, overheard on the police radio, so take that with a grain of salt, but that is not confirmed. That's just what we're overhearing. Also, there is some belief that those cables actually are jumper cables, not actually a hose, like we had originally thought. They may be jumper cables, just based on the end of the cable there.
Yeah.
So again, what he's trying to do with the jumper cables, anybody's guess. He's just been really, I would say, mostly just fidgeting with them. There have been moments where you've seen him almost wrapping them around his wrist, but he really has, that's what it's been. I mean, it's not like he's trying to build something back there or messing with any other tools. We've occasionally seen the screwdriver. He pulls it out occasionally, but other than that, he's kind of just wishing that they would, end this for him in a more violent way, and that's probably not going to happen the way he intends for it to happen. What they are doing, though, what I can tell you for sure, is that they are covering their bases on every end here, and both patrol units and canine units are going to be blocking every direction just in case of the scenario where he crawls out of the vehicle either through the back or through the front and tries to run away. Obviously, he won't get very far. Certainly, he appears injured, but to ensure that they can retrieve him quickly, they are getting the canine units ready for that possible scenario.
Well, that they, again, as we know, that those canines are, invaluable tools to apprehend suspects. But again, now we see this suspect getting back out of that back windshield, which is, we haven't seen him come fully out like that for a while. And now he's really, I mean, is he going to get out of that, Chris, or is he just going to stay there and extend himself? And but it's obviously very concerning if. You just can't tell, but he does look agitated. He looks like, could they have fired anything in there? Because his eyes are really squinting right now.
I am now seeing his movements here. He's clearly in pain, and I am starting to wonder, Colleen, and unfortunately we may not be here to witness it, but we've got Newscopter pulling into position because we have to go get some fuel. But I have to wonder if he has been shot in the leg or has been severely injured. His lower extremities are not working properly. So let's put it that way. He is in pain. He's now crawling out of the vehicle. We are trying to hold this shot as long as we possibly can as he appears to be crawling out of the vehicle. I hesitate to say that he's giving up because he's clutching onto that screwdriver. He's clutching onto the screwdriver as he crawls out of the vehicle, unable to move his legs. His legs almost appear as if they're completely limp. And so one has to wonder now whether he's been shot in the legs or if he's been injured. His legs have been disabled some other way, but now he's crawling out with one hand on the front hood of that SWAT team Bearcat. I just don't see him ready to give up yet because he is still clutching on to that screwdriver. He is not complying. He is still, there it is. There's the wound. There's the wound. He has been hurt. Whether he inflicted that on himself or whether that is a bullet that caused that or some other injury, his left thigh is bleeding profusely. His left thigh is bleeding profusely. He certainly, it explains the amount of blood that we've seen dripping down the vehicle and all over his hands. He is losing blood. I think it's fair to say he is losing blood. It's hard to say at what rate, but in any event, he is in a lot of pain. He is now on the hood of this SWAT vehicle, and he just does not look like he's ready to give up. He's certainly trying to do something. He's got something in mind. He has some intention of maybe climbing on the roof, perhaps because he doesn't want to climb towards those officers. He is using every muscle in his body to try and exit this vehicle and get away from those officers, not go towards them. It does not look like he's willing to give up. He is clutching on to the screwdriver. I think he still has it in his hand, and he is now crawling onto the top of that GMC Yukon. Again, to recap, this is a stolen city vehicle belonging to the Department of Water and Power. This is a suspect who is wanted for assault with a deadly weapon. He has engaged in gunfire with these officers. We do not know exactly what that firefight looked like, that gunfight looked like, I should say. But in any event, we now find ourselves where the suspect has managed, after over an hour held up inside the vehicle, he is now on the roof of the vehicle, which again is going to play into their decision-making here, because all of a sudden, firing gas canisters in that direction aren't going to do much good. I mean, they certainly have tear gas that they could use to choke him, but he is not in a confined space inside that truck. And unfortunately, guys, that is going to do it for our coverage in Air 7 HD. Mark and Colleen, I know you guys are ready to take over, but a suspenseful night here and a dramatic night here in Atwater Village. Mark and Colleen, back to you.
All right, Chris Christie, thank you very much for the coverage that you have been bringing us of what has been a truly bizarre set of circumstances involving this man and this DWP SUV, and now the standoff with much of the LAPD's tactical elements here as they try to bring this to a conclusion. It is clear, you can see blood dripping down from him onto the roof of the vehicle. It appears correct that he's got a pretty significant wound in his leg, and he is now trying to stand up. It looks like, you know, Colleen, he's, you know,
Mark,
it's just not working.
It's not working. He is so injured. When earlier we showed the side of that vehicle, there are at least 20 bullet holes in the driver's side door, and then there are at least 8 bullet holes in the front windshield. But what he is doing,
he's trying to stand on his one good leg.
That It's remarkable, though, to see that he has been in this much pain, and this has happened to him because for the last hour and a half or so, he has been incredibly agitated, giving no idea that he has probably been suffering with possible gunshot wound to that leg. But
well, and it appears, based on the angle of his foot right now, that leg is broken
or paralyzed. Something is obviously very wrong with that leg, and obviously needs medical attention, but he is not giving up, Mark. He has been here. We're at Atwater Village. We're at Colorado Boulevard and Edenhurst, where this pursuit came to an end. We know the front 2 tires of that Yukon vehicle, they are gone. It's as if there's just an axle right there. No word if this pursuit, if any spike strips were used, if there was any kind of police trying to take this suspect in. But Mark, we have been showing also, it's worthy of seeing again, the video of this vehicle. Fire is taking place. There's gunshot. We're hearing it's somebody, a bystander, taking video. So it's a bit hard to tell exactly who's firing upon whom. But let's take a look at it again, because you can hear the violence associated with this pursuit.
A lot of shots fired.
And you see the vehicle drive away. You don't know who exactly is firing upon this vehicle, or if someone is taking fire from this vehicle, because there was a lot of officers involved. We know that part of this, a call came out that an officer needs help call, because it said the pursuit started with the suspect rammed a vehicle.
All right, here we go.
Being apprehended.
It looks like they're going to try to apprehend him now, right? Is he still clutching that screwdriver? When he got out of when he climbed out, he had a screwdriver in his hand. Maybe he has dropped that since then. He is clearly pretty badly hurt. He's in a lot of pain. Okay, it appears
Holding
I'm being
onto
told
that
that,
rail.
that he has dropped the screwdriver, so now it's safe for them to approach him, and they're going to bring him into custody now. They're just trying to put his arms behind his back. He's not cooperating with that, and clearly this guy's pretty strong based on what we've seen.
You can tell he's ripped, but he is holding on to one of those railings on the hood of that car and just not giving up without a fight, despite his leg being profusely bleeding and looking like it can't move. But again, they have so many officers out there, Mark. It's unbelievable. We've seen a lot of officers there, and they obviously are going to.
Okay, they're pulling him off the roof now. They're bringing him down. Still not fully in custody yet. I think they're going to try to do something with his legs as well, even though one of them is broken, just because of the level of.
Yeah, I think I think they did end up being able to apprehend him. So I think that he is in their custody. I'm having a hard time seeing it, though. Maybe you can see it, but I think that they have him in custody. And it didn't look like it was any sort of violent apprehension.
No, given all the violence that took place in the hours before this final ending, the actual taking of the suspect into custody has been as far as we can tell, non-violent. He's been resisting, but as far as we can tell, he's not throwing punches or anything like that, and the officers are not doing that from what we can tell. No violent movements down there. It's pretty dark. But the posture of the officers who are surrounding it has certainly changed. They've got the guy in custody. He's under control. They're going to take him to the, let's see, it's an Atwater Village, probably USC Medical Center.
And they do have an ambulance that's just, out of our view shop, but they have emergency responders to the sort of the left of the screen right there, right? This is happening right next to an Amazon distribution center as well. They almost evacuated part of it earlier. But again, he's had a screwdriver in his hand the whole time. That's all we have seen. And but this person is kind of in desperate need of medical care. It's very obvious.
Perhaps psychiatric care as well,
given
his actions and what has been taking place tonight.
He seemed absolutely not fazed. And to see what's happening now, to see what was happening an hour ago, you would have never thought he was injured at all. He was so animated, so agitated, and screaming at the officers. So it looks like this has come to an end. We will see that ambulance coming up, but again, it was very intimidating and impressive to see the LAPD SWAT team roll up with 3 Bearcats and just box it in. It was the show of force was there, and there's several different jurisdictions the agencies are taking place. There's the Foothill Division, there's the CHP, because this was also part on the highway. So this is definitely a multi-agency effort here to get this person into custody.
And it's all working now. And we'll have to, once this is all said and done, now we've got a better shot with the filter has been changed. Once it's all said and done, we'll get a sense of what the damage total was throughout this process.
Yep.
And whether he had a weapon and was firing at officers, or whether he was using the vehicle as a weapon and they were firing at him to try to get him to stop. They're within their rights to be able to stop someone from running them over, and that is well within their purview to be able to do that. It is typically not within LAPD policy to fire into a moving vehicle or from a moving vehicle, but there are, of course, exceptions, and this, of course, would be a big one.
Yeah, and just seeing that the manner of this suspect, they were not going to give up, and just seeing when we first started covering this and we saw all that blood coming out of the passenger side door window area, that was sort of interesting. But I know we have video, if we can show part of the video, just to show the driver's side with all the gunshot holes inside that the driver's side vehicle. You would get an idea of why maybe his left leg is as wounded as it is. And you see it right there. You see all those bullet holes. And then you see him on the windshield as well. But this person was certainly not acting like they were in any pain whatsoever while they were screaming at law enforcement.
Incredible, the number of shots that were fired there. The fact that he wasn't hit fatally, given the number of shots that were fired, is pretty remarkable in itself. But clearly wounded in that process. and he has lost a lot of blood, but still strong enough to hold police at bay for that length of time. Do things like what we're seeing here in the video, blowing the back window out.
With that screwdriver.
With a screwdriver.
That's what I'm saying. He is incredibly strong. And we don't know what kind of drugs, if any, but one can speculate that probably under some sort of substance here to make him so incredibly agitated and so unpredictable.
And to some degree, depending on what the substance is, impervious to pain.
Yeah, and I kept saying that he seems impervious to pain, which leads you to believe that's what makes it so hard for law enforcement to understand how to take this person into custody, because they don't know exactly what substance he could be on.
Right. They're loading him onto the ambulance now. He is he's clearly still conscious, he's kicking. He's fighting them. Even now, even with what appears to be a left leg that is pretty badly wounded, perhaps broken, because of the way you could see his foot pointing in the wrong way, and whatever else might be going on with him in terms of other wounds that we just don't know about or can't see. They're going to have to strap him down to this gurney and then take him to LA County USC Medical Center, which is not far from Atwater Village, probably 5 minutes by ambulance, and where he will be treated but also be taken into custody. He is in custody now. You see him still agitated, still writhing, still trying to communicate or speaking or screaming at officers. We don't know what he might be saying, but this incident is now over. He has been taken into custody. He is out of commission. And so, as well as that DWP vehicle that was badly damaged, pretty much totaled, I would think.
Yeah, but you know what? The one good thing, the takeaway of this one is to see the patients on behalf of law enforcement. They were waiting out to see how to apprehend the suspect, and they waited long enough. You know, it's been going on a few hours now, and they waited out to have a law enforcement. They've definitely taken a different stance. They know that mental health is a very big factor in how they're going to take people into custody, and they were very, very patient with this.
And the best outcome possible. Everybody is out of this situation alive. That's what is the goal of every single interaction involving any police agency. Everybody wants to go home, or at least get their suspect and send him or her to where they need to be, intact and alive. And at this point, that's the best outcome you can hope for, given the level of crime that took place and the